What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a special edition of Faith Unaltered. I am just one of the miraculous, awesome, epic co-hosts that we have this evening tonight. My brother Joshua Davison joins us with our special guest. Josh, who is our special guest?
Our special guest, Israel Trujillo.
Nailed it.
Said it
Nailed
perfectly, man. You even said it better than I have ever said it, man.
that.
I'm just trying to make a world a better place, one name at a time, right?
Hey, we're
You
doing
see,
it right here.
Swan Sona. You see. He did it well. You know.
Shots
hard.
fired already, and we've been live for 7 seconds.
I love Swan. Just joking. He's a great guy. I mean, he's in Harvard for a reason. Great guy.
Swan's smart. I've learned a lot from Swan over the years, and so just watching his YouTube videos and things like that, I got mad respect for Swan. But okay, guys, so Israel, you will be responding to an article that was in response to a video that you had responded to, right? And so I guess Tim Stratton, Dr. Tim Stratton, who's been a regular on our show at one point in time, we did a whole host of shows about free will, determinism, Calvinism, Molinism, things of that sort. And so what has happened to get this conversation that we have tonight planned for y'all is that Tim released a video on his YouTube channel. Israel, to my knowledge, responds to the video in a letter that was written to Dr. Stratton. Tim responds then with an article that he published on his Free Thinking Ministries website. And now here we are today. Is that about how that went, Israel?
So way more casual than that. Well, I started like so much more casual. Actually, I was doing the typical, just debating people from Soteriology 101. This time it was Scott Ju Jen, who publishes mostly the memes out there in Soteriology 101. And I don't know where. Forgot. So we were debating Calvinism as usually, and so Tim went in the conversation and recommended me his video, but I had already seen it, and just presented my critique on that video. And but I was never expecting that I would be right now with you guys right here doing a response to an article. But yeah, he thought my response was interesting, and he wrote that article. And yeah, I cannot stay shut too much, so I have to make a response, and he's gonna make a response. So we're hopefully have to settle it in a debate pretty soon. Hopefully we had before it talked about giving both of us of our opening statements, so we can be sure of what the other is gonna try to argue. Sure. And from our opening statements, we prep. So I do my opening, he does a response, and then that we debate. So I'm going to be doing this. He's going to be doing probably a response to this video. And from there, then there will be the debate, as he will have the last rebuttal before we debate.
Okay. Well, keep us up to date on how all that goes. We'd love to watch it, or even host another discussion between you and him in the future. Like, that'd be really, really cool, I think. So, all right. So what we have here then, Israel is going to be responding to the article that we have. We're going to pull that up here in just a second. And then also some comments that were left on Facebook. And so, Israel, I don't know if there's anything that you want to go into before we pull this up. Would you want me to pull the article up first, or the comments on Facebook?
No, I guess the article first, because that's okay, where it all started. First, which is my reply to pretty much Stratton's video. Okay. I guess you can pull that so you guys can see what he's responding to.
Okay. All right. So let me just read just a little bit of this. So I'll read, Israel, your objection first.
Part, right?
Yep. And then I'll go into a little bit of Tim's response here. So, Israel, you wrote, Dear Dr. Stratton, I saw the video, an epistemological case against Calvinism, right when it came out. And I was surprised that the whole video you assumed that a determinist has to argue for general reliability. I can simply reject this premise and argue that God is absolutely reliable. Seems to me that you have to argue for a specific sense of deception. But in the colloquial sense, deception often refers to some form of coercive act, and Calvinists deny coercion. So if you redefine what deceiving is, then there's no debate. Worst thing for your case is that even if I were to affirm that God is deceptive, that still gets you anywhere, as you'd have to somehow affirm that God is bound by his own commandments for men, as evil is sin, and sin is transgression of the law. And God's law is for humans, not for himself. And the worst part of this is that even if you were to prove God is bound by his own laws, which is very easily proven false in Scripture, you'd shoot yourself in the foot with a intercontinental missile, as you'd prove even your own version of the God of Christianity to be false, since you'd have to say that God is a murderer for killing babies in the flood, Egypt's firstborn, and David's baby, to name a few. So in the task of disproving Calvinism with this argument, you destroy your own view. We could also get into a tu quoque case on how a God that chooses indeterministically is unreliable, as he could always do otherwise, like being suddenly choosing to be deceptive, whereas the Calvinist immutable God always chooses to be truthful because it's in his nature to be truthful. I can even prove to you libertarian free will falls into a true dichotomy between determinism and randomness, so that would leave your worldview as a non-starter. I think the epistemic meltdown will happen in your side, dear brother Israel. So, with that being said, Israel, is there anything that you want to say? Just give a little bit more detail about your response, and then we can go into a little bit of Tim's reply. I know it's pretty long. I won't read the whole thing, but take it away. You have the floor.
Well, so yeah, I guess I'll first talk about like what argument I'm referring to, that I believe it's a true dichotomy that leads that leads an option between randomness and determinism.
Okay.
So let me pull it up. Oh yeah, I got it right here. All right, so I didn't have my my notes with me. I had this written down before, so I had to reread it in the last 30 minutes. So if if it's not so airtight, please excuse me. But I'm gonna put it in a formal form, but still we may get some maybe some caveats out. But okay. So premise one: the nature of libertarian free will is either ordered or not ordered. This premise is based on a true dichotomy, as we're talking A or not A, ordered or not ordered. So in what this premise is trying to achieve is to try to focus the problem into just two options. So just to close it as much as we can and see where it's going to lead from either the affirmation of A or not A. And by ordered, I don't mean like when you order something in Amazon, of course. I don't mean that. What I mean by ordered is to see some pattern, some form. So when you check the definition, is usually it refers to seeing a something with a form, with a shape, something identifiable.
Okay.
All right, premise two: the nature of libertarian free will is not ordered, as things that are not ordered are random. So well, over here we can think about a mathematically that pretty much randomness is impossible. So when it comes to randomness, we cannot find a pattern, we cannot find any order. That's why it is random. An algorithm, a computer cannot generate it. So whenever you see online that a random number, let's say you go to a website and it says random number generator, and it's truly just a very complex algorithm, and this happens because there's not truly a a random number generator. The same way there's no randomness, it's an absurdity. It's something that doesn't seem to exist. And I think this relates also to my metaphysics. So I was gonna attack mostly Stratton, partly on his metaphysics, on see his dualistic metaphysics. But like 20 minutes before this stream started, he was telling me that well, I'm not interested in too quirky responses, saying that oh yeah, you as a Molinist, you got a god of deception too. I prepped a little bit for that. I was gonna bring some of that,
Sure.
and I was gonna do it with his dualism, but yeah, with my idealism, because he was saying that he's open to what is it called, Michael Jones' view of idealism, which I think is great. And yeah, so when it comes to my metaphysics, something we would expect order if idealism is true, if idealism or panentheism or some pan-computational idealism, it seems that all would reduce to bundle theory, to something that is not described quantitatively, but something that is described based on propositions. So whenever in bundle theory, whenever you got an object, you describe that based on proposition, because when we try to describe it quantitatively, well, how do we do that? Well, in quantum mechanics, we see quantum superposition, and we cannot just measure it. The particles collapse into a wave function whenever we try to measure it. So it's we wouldn't have any proof of a quantitative world, and the data is much better interpreted on an idealistic framework. So since Tim is open to idealism and I'm an idealist, I guess this second premise makes actually quite a lot of sense, that it is not ordered as it reminds me of James Anderson's argument of the Lord of Non-Contradiction, where he starts from propositions and saying that propositions have a intentionality, and intentionality is a property of a thought, and thoughts are part of a mind. So he argues from propositions to the existence of God, which is what we expect if idealism is true. And yeah, when we see reality, it seems like it's all based on information. When we see the Bible teaches that God is a God of order. There are so many verses out there that God is a God of order. So I think premise 2 shouldn't be that controversial. I think, especially biblically, I don't know what kind of biblical case could Stratton even make, as many non-Calvinists would affirm the premise. As many non-Calvinists would say that there's no explicit proof of libertarian free will in the Bible. Some try to say that. I think it's a stretch, but many would admit that it is something that you read into, something that you believe is consistent with Scripture, and especially because of this argument. Because when you think of libertarian free will, kind of think about choice generation, and we got to figure out how that choice is generated, whether it's ordered or not ordered, and it would be really weird to find that kind of stuff in the Bible. So, but anyways, I think it's pretty intuitive that the nature of libertarian free will is not non-ordered, so not A. And even if we had a dualistic framework, so before there's a creation ex nihilo, we would still have a mental reality, as God is a mind, or, well, unless you're a Cal Allender that he left idealism and he now says God is like a mind, not a mind, whatever that means. But yeah, so usually we would all think that God thinks, minds think, so God is probably a mind, or has a mind. I would say it's a mind. But anyways, I forgot where I was going with this.
Can I ask something for clarity real quick?
Go ahead.
So you said libertarian freedom is not ordered. So you mean by implication it is an ordered system of some kind?
Well, we're barely on premise 2. We haven't gotten to premise 3 yet. I guess that's a good question, because it's I should have laid out the premises first before, going ahead and explaining them, just to make sure everyone has the argument in their mind. So
I was under the impression that was premise 1.
I was talking about premise 2. So premise 1 was merely stating that it's a true dichotomy. So it's stating that the only options that we have. on the
Right,
nature
Josh.
of libertarian free will must be either ordered or not ordered, which is A or not A. So there's no third option over here. So by the law of excluded middle, it should be true. I don't think it's controversial.
Well, I'm confused a little bit by what you mean by order, I suppose.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want me to first lay out all the premises.
Yeah,
so
no, that's
people got
fine.
an
I think
idea,
I might have misunderstood the connection between
no, but
one and two.
that's great.
and
It's a very good question, and we'll go over it because that's pretty much the heart of the argument, whether
Okay.
trying to prove that libertarian free will is ordered. So okay, I'm just gonna lay out all the premises to make sure we all got it in our mind whenever you guys are hearing my explanation of each of the premises. So premise 1, the nature of libertarian free will is either ordered or non-ordered, so A or not A. Premise 2, the nature of libertarian free will is not A, so not ordered. Premise 3, the nature of libertarian free will is ordered. That is the first conclusion. Premise 4, if the nature of libertarian free will is ordered and God put that order, then God determines human choices. That is going to be the probably most controversial for usually. I've had already this conversation with Braxton Hunter and with David Palman, and weird thing, they'll have pretty different solutions to that. I'm going to talk about some of the options out there and some of the responses I've heard from some of your favorite apologists out there. So we're in premise 3. Oh yeah, premise 4. So if the nature of libertarian free will is ordered and God put that order, then God determines human choices. Premise 5, the nature of libertarian free will is ordered and God put that order. Premise 6, which is the last conclusion, thus God determines human choices. So now going back to premise 2, to your question, Josh. So you were asking me, how do I explain order? So you want to better understand what order means, which is pretty important. And again, what we order from Amazon, although it will be pretty good if you guys order me something from Amazon, but sadly that's not the
I'll
order
get you something for your wedding, Israel. I will.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Yes, sir. Don't worry about it. All the super chat and patrons. I'm gonna hack all that. I'm gonna hack your account, and I'll get it anyway.
You get about $5, buddy. So
yeah,
good luck.
We can actually make a Frankfurt style case. So yeah. I would determine you because I would actually hack you and get the money anyways. But the fact that you are freely with your volition, you are giving me a gift. So you were determined, yeah, you were morally responsible. So we just made a Frankfurt style case on the spot. Fantastic, dude.
Oh, snap.
Anyways, yeah, we were sorry about that.
I love it. I love it.
We're talking about the premise 2 that the nature of libertarian free will is not ordered, not A, pretty much. So ordered, I mean it in a sense of a sequence or a shape or a something that it is identifiable. So when we think about something ordered, we think about something identifiable. So if we say, let's say my house is in order, we expect some patterns in there. So if we say a bookshelf is order, we expect them to be either parallel and some perpendicular. Maybe play around with the sizes of the books to make it more even, or
so
just
there's more than one way to order something. But you're saying that what you mean by order is recognizable pattern or observable regularity.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Actually, when I presented this argument to David Palman, I put premise 2 as either pattern or not pattern. Although I changed it a little bit just to because there was some conflation with what pattern was, just to make sure. I think order is a little bit more simple, but yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Pattern, order, is something that we can identify in reality that follows a sequence. That'll be a good way. So that is the second premise. So it is not order, which I think would imply randomness. All things that we can conceive are are pretty much ordered. We cannot even conceive mathematically something that can be not ordered. So if I prove my metaphysics, which is idealism, and I think when we're parsimonious, when it comes to the empirical data, there will be nothing to demonstrate a quantitative world. And I would actually say that if Tim were to argue for dualism, he would have a deity of deception, as there's what is called representation in material reality. So if you got a body and that body is material and you have your senses and you get data from those senses, pretty much that would the senses will be creating an image about reality. It would not be an explicit teaching of what reality is, but it would be an image of reality. So it's not reality itself, it's an image. So if you got a body, you got to explain what are the reasons of why you got your senses. In this case, your eyes, which would be creating the image. So even as a dualist, you gotta explain what your senses are doing, because we all understand that our eyes, whenever you close it, they're you're not getting information about the outside world. So they're giving you information about the outside world. And here's the issue with representation. So so Bernardo Kastrup, who I think is a freaking genius, he's not a Christian. He doesn't even believe in a God, but he's an idealist, and he's probably the best idealist, the leading idealist that he is. I'm a big fan of Kastrup, to be honest, but he uses 3 analogies. Well, maybe more, but I love this 3. So imagine a map. So of let's say Switzerland, and Switzerland would be reality, and the map would be a representation of Switzerland. So you got a map of Switzerland, but it's not Switzerland. So whenever a materialist, or in this case a dualist, that gets his information from sense data, aka a Thomist, they would be having a pretty much a representation. So it will be like a map. So it will be like, oh yeah, one day I'm gonna explore this map, or advance this map, or understand this map so well that one day I'll understand Switzerland. But we understand how absurd that is. You can see a map all you want, you can put all the nuances you want, it's never going to be Switzerland. Another way, another analogy he uses is of a plane with dials. So for those that don't know, a plane, it has pretty small windows, but usually the pilot doesn't see through the windows. The pilots navigate the plane through dials. They have all sorts of sensors and data that it gives. So imagine a pilot. Imagine if a pilot would say that he's understanding reality based on the dials. So basically saying that the dials represent reality, but I mean, they're just dials. You can understand the dials as much as you want. You're never advancing, and you're never gonna get what reality is. Also, if we, I think this is going to be one of the most important ones. So imagine you're watching the World Cup through your TV or several TVs, and it's as if you were saying that that the TV image that you're seeing is reality, but this would imply that what you're seeing, that pretty much reality is pixelated, as when you see a screen, screens have pixels. So you would conclude, if you understand the reality through that lens of the TV, you would understand that reality is pixelated. So that pretty much Messi and Ronaldo are going to be made of pixels. So an image is a deception. It's so you're not really seeing something in reality. So I would ask, like, who is the god of deception over here? I would say is the dualist god. But you know, he's so open to idealism. I was really hoping that he was a dualist, and he is a dualist. But you know, he says it's not too dogmatic. I barely realized this 30 minutes before, so don't get Stratton too much here. But to all my dualist friends, you have a god of deception. He's deceiving you every single day with your sense data, especially Thomists that depend so much on their arguments, that depend on on pretty much your senses. As Thomas Aquinas is up, you can tell his arguments depend on sense data, or they start from sense data. especially on causation. So we're supposed to observe causation, which we don't. And in the literature, I don't think we have any proof of causation, at least empirical proof. But anyways, so Stratton, as now a dualist, he believes in a God of deception. I'm sorry, Tim, it's a tu quoque, but I mean, you probably told me there's like 20 minutes before to not do it too quickly, but I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But so I guess we have to argue for a mental reality. So what I'm trying to do here is to force Tim to just bite the bullet. And if you're open to idealism, then I guess this argument would force you into idealism. So because now what I'm trying to do is that to make sure you don't have an option of dualism, because you will have a deceptive deity. But if you're in idealism, that's going to support pretty much my premise 3, which is the nature of liberty and free will is ordered. This will definitely support my premise as we can reduce all of reality to propositions if idealism is true. So I think I think I pretty much forced over here Tim to accept number 3, or go with dualism and somehow try to prove that God, that you don't have a God of deception in with your dualistic metaphysics. That was premise 3. So some have actually bitten the bullet. So I've had this conversation too with Eric Hernandez, and he writes the bullet. He's like, oh well, okay, yeah, no, libertarian for choice is ordered. So I mean, they'll all tell me a different thing. So Eric Hernandez, he tells me that okay, he bites the bullet. He says libertarian free will is ordered. When I ask Braxton Hunter, he says part of it is not ordered, and part of it is ordered, which I think is still. I mean, I don't want that type of control. Imagine that one part of me orderly chooses consistently to not crash when I'm driving on the highway, but suddenly the other half of whatever that is, whatever other part is not ordered, that part wants to crash, and it's indeterministically. So I just indeterministically crash. Sometimes it will be absurd. I wouldn't want that. So I don't like Braxton's response too much right here. Then we got Palman's had this conversation with David Palman too, and he says it's not a true dichotomy, and he tries to argue that there's this something else called intentionality that simply is the agent being intentional. I think that was the weirdest. I mean, I don't see how it is not a true dichotomy. I hope I'm not misrepresenting Palman too much. I love Palman. He loves to talk. He's a clay that loves to talk back to the potter all the time. But he's an awesome guy. I love Dave. Just kidding. All right. But yeah, those are some approaches that I've heard. Not sure where Stratton is gonna land. Maybe some fourth option. There's actually a fourth option. I also spoke with Michael Jones of Inspiring Philosophy. Mm-hmm. I think he's idealists definitely have the best shot on something like libertarian free will. Why? Because if mental reality is true, and we interpret the scientific data on fundamental particles, on how they collapse when observed, and we are actually observing reality because of the problem I already explained on how materials have a representation, but an idealist would have actual acquaintance with reality. So he doesn't have that weakness. So whenever we observe those fundamental particles, we see that they collapse indeterministically. So if those fundamental particles that are mental are indeterministically, and we're made out of that pretty much, and all reality is made out of those, then we have a indeterministic universe. Although over here, I would say that I would say that we don't know whether it is deterministically or deterministically based on the empirical data. just mark my words, on the empirical data. I'm not saying that we cannot know. We cannot know on the empirical data. That's a clarification, just to make sure I don't Tim doesn't respond to that and take it like I don't think there's a response. But what my response would be more philosophical, that we can interpret that data, whatever, however way it is collapsing, that even though we cannot find a pattern or know of a pattern, we could still infer that there must be a order or pattern in whenever a fundamental particle collapses, and this will be based on premise 1, that the nature of libertarian free will is either ordered or non-ordered. So we're back to the true dichotomy. So even on Michael Jones' response, he would still fall into premise 1, and he will have to argue that even if we don't know, we can infer indeed that there is the nature of libertarian free will, the choice generator, whatever that is. I don't want to say system, or because someone like Palman doesn't like to use that language. Don't call it system, because I mean, the system kind of implies it's ordered. Mm-hmm. But inspiring philosophy, Michael Jones, he would fall into premise 1. He would still have to argue from a logical inference. So yeah, those were the 3 premises. We're gonna go to 4. I guess this is gonna be the most controversial for everyone. So if the nature of libertarian free will is ordered, and God put the order, then God determines human choices. So I wish I would have more prep on choice generation. There are actually some theories of truth that try to explain how this functions metaphysically. So there's for example, like Chris Langan in his theory of everything, the CTMU. He's allegedly the smartest man in America, or at least the guy with the highest IQ of America. He's got a theory of everything where he seems panentheistic. And yeah, he also reduces everything to propositions. So he also believes in a mental reality, and he argues for how choice is how a choice happens from that. So in a computational worldview, we would which will be similar to what Michael Jones believes, which Tim Stratton says he's open to. If that's the case, I mean, computers have algorithms, and whenever we have a computer and we put, let's say, a video game, a novel, a movie, it functions algorithmically. So it's based on propositions. You can reduce it to ones and zeros, codes, and there's patterns all over the place. So if Tim Stratton chooses dualism, he's gonna fall into a deity of deception himself. And if he chooses idealism, and he says that he's open to Michael Jones' perspective, then I mean, that seems pretty pattern if it's computational, and especially since Michael Jones believes in bundle theory. Everything reduces to bundle theory, which is propositional, and propositions are ordered. There's some A, some relationship, and some B. So A, B, and the relationship between A and B, the intentionality. So that seems pretty ordered. And if whatever choice generator we have, is going to have intentionality, and A, and B, and the relationship between A and B. So and God put that right there in us. Therefore, I think it seems pretty intuitive that I mean, if idealism is true, that the premise 4 would follow. So premise 5 is just the consequence of premise 4, that the nature of libertarian free will is ordered, and God put that order, which I don't think Stratton would argue against. Maybe not. It depends on how he answers premise 1 and 2, but it would follow to a conclusion that thus God determines human choices. That was just one argument. I got another one, an inductive argument for determined Jesus. So inductive, it's a probabilistic, but I don't know if you guys have questions, you guys need clarifications, or
I was actually going
to
to ask about, I was going to ask about, I believe it was premise 4, the one that you said was controversial.
Right.
Are you asserting that God would be determining the nature of human choosing, or are you leaping to God is determining individual choices as such?
So in I affirm Kastrup's metaphysics. So far I think is the best, although I'm exploring other type of idealistic metaphysics, other flavors of idealism. But in Kastrup's version of idealism, we're pretty much disassociations of a mind at large. So there is a mental reality, and we have our consciousness because we are dissociated from that reality. Dissociation in the sense that we don't have epistemic access to outside to whatever we are aware of. So whatever we are aware of is our dissociative boundary. We are dissociated from that which we are not aware of. We have a center of consciousness that is limited by our contingent existence. So it is an extremely important question that you asked, because I'm not a hyper Calvinist. So the way I believe that God determines a person is that whenever a disassociation happens, that disassociation it's a bundle of propositions, a bundle of thoughts, a bundle of intentionalities. So it is a bundle. Why? Because it's dissociative. So it is whatever those boundaries are. It has a limited number of propositions. So whatever is within those boundaries, that order that we find within the agent between the dissociative boundary, which we are, it will be made by God. So that order is made by God. And as we can observe in reality, whenever we put an order, it follows that order. So the choice generator would have to be ordered, would have to be put by God. So God would predestine in the sense, imagine a, how's it called? So there's these chess engines. So there's Alpha Zero, there's Stockfish. And so Alpha Zero is more complicated because it plays against itself millions of times, and that's how he learns. And it even beats its creators. It just beats everyone. But I'll use Stockfish. So chess engines that function more on being fed data from already played games, from historical games, from chess theory. They will have a certain number of propositions within them. It's algorithmic on how the choices unfold of the Stockfish algorithm. So there doesn't have to be a coercion between the creator of Stockfish and Stockfish beating Magnus Carlsen or whatever your favorite chess player is. We got to clarify, is Magnus Carlsen, not Colton Carlson. He's way better. I wish he was here so we can both poke on Stratton right now. Just kidding, but yeah. So yeah, it's not that the creator of Stockfish has to meticulously determine every choice of Stockfish. He just made Stockfish, and he knows what Stockfish is going to do, or at least where if he's aware of all the things he put into Stockfish, unless of course there could be many people, but assuming it was just one person. And let's say if there's an algorithm on chess theory, whenever an opportunity comes of a certain move, he would know how it will respond. Why? Because he put the algorithm, he put the order within the engine of Stockfish. So it's not coercive. So the dissociative boundary happens. So after we're disassociated, we are free creatures. I believe in free will. I believe in free will, just not in a libertarian sense like Tim Stratton does. And Yeah, pretty much. So there's no coercion. So whatever analogies he try to use, Tim, I please ask you that you do not use a coercive analogy, as it would
Sure.
be disanalogous to my position, which is what Leighton Flowers does all the time, and it's so annoying. Pretty much all of his analogies do fall for that coercion, but yeah, just to make sure he makes a rebuttal assuming my metaphysics, because he's trying to make an analysis of internal coherence within my worldview. So I please ask him to not use those, or explain why he should use them if he uses them.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Israel. So let me just ask you, just to clarify then. So it sounds like what you're saying, and there's a lot there. So I'm going to break this down in a nutshell style. So what you're saying is, I'm assuming that you would define free will as in not coerced, not forced, kind of like we had Chris Date, Jeremiah Short on, the Black Doctor. He's a Presbyterian, by the way, Calvinist. And so is that how you would define free will then? Is that we are free in the sense that God is not forcing or coercing us to do anything?
Right. Yes. Correct. No forcing, no coercion, no puppet strings.
Okay.
Just creatures acting freely from being disassociated. And it would be weird how someone would object to this, as when we ask libertarian free will proponents, why do we have free will? We usually get the ad hoc answer, because God has free will, which doesn't even follow. So if God has libertarian free will, it doesn't follow that you must have it. He creates rocks, and rocks don't have libertarian free will. So it's a non sequitur. But
So you don't think being made in the image of God has anything to do with that? How would you define being made in the image of God?
That was actually where I was going to go as well. I was listening to the way that you described all of your descriptions and analogies seem to be ones that rely on impersonality. Like you're talking about computer programs or algorithms or
rocks,
causal chains based on necessity or inanimate objects, and none of these things actually have the capacity for personhood in the way that we do, and they're not the things that draw reality into unity. You also talked about our sense data as though it were explicitly and unquestionably not real. Or that it doesn't actually have any correspondence to reality insofar as it could be considered deceptive by definition. And so I think there's a lot of backwork necessarily to make sense of a lot of what you've claimed already. From my perspective,
there was a lot of claims right there. Let me so we'll go one by one. One was about the image of God. So let me write.
Yeah, let's start with the simple.
Well, they all draw back to the image of God. Ultimately, I think Tyler and I probably have the same thing in mind here.
Yeah.
Is that
of course.
I think the thing that you're talking about as a random choice generator isn't actually random or a generator or a mechanism at all. It's actually personhood.
So we're going to start with that. So we're first on personhood. I think that begs the question. So we haven't heard an argument on why it is the case that personhood must not be algorithmic. It was just an assertion. But when it comes to personhood, I think in my metaphysics, Kastrup explains. Well, in Kastrup metaphysics, he explains, and I'm passing you that. Just sorry. In his metaphysics, he explains that what makes special an alter of consciousness of a human is the levels of awareness, which will be that we are aware, that we are aware, that we are aware. So whenever I use the algorithmic analogy, it's just in the sense of how the deterministic framework would look like. But it doesn't mean, I'm not saying that it will have the same level of awareness. Why? Because a stockfish algorithm is not aware that it is aware that it is aware. It doesn't have those layers of awareness. So I can simply argue that a human, we have personhood as we are aware that we are aware that we are aware. And nothing we have created so far as we're trying to make artificial intelligence, and we haven't been able to. Why? Because we haven't found out how to make those levels of awareness. So there will be no algorithm that humans have created that would resemble those levels of awareness. So whenever my case is represented, it shouldn't be represented in a like too analogous to a to Stockfish engine in the sense of awareness. I want it to be analogous in the same of determinism, not in the sense of awareness and personhood, because a personhood would have different levels of awareness.
So let me hit on that real quick. So I would say that, and let me just ask you this, Israel. So to go back to the image of God and basically what distinguishes humans who are persons from, let's say, demons or angels who are aware that they're aware, who are persons in the sense of they have personhood in the sense of awareness, right? Would you agree with that? And then if so, what would distinguish humans from, let's say, demons and angels?
Sure. That is a fantastic question. So there could be different levels of disassociation and dissociative boundaries. So I would say, of course, they are person. Why? Because they are also dissociative boundaries of a mental reality. So the difference is that dissociative boundaries can be layered or structured in different ways. So, for example, if we have a mental reality, something like the material world, it will be mental in a sense, but also our consciousness will be mental in a sense. So we wouldn't have, let's say, an association with our cells or with our kidneys. Like, I don't know what my kidney is doing. I know what it does. I don't know that I know what it does, but I don't know what it looks like or what
There's
it's
a
doing
lot
right now.
even going
I don't
inside of a
have.
cell, so I can
Yeah. So
imagine a whole organ. Yeah.
yeah, so there's different levels of association. So imagine how's it called? So in a let's say so in a video game, so what is called usually digital physics. So Michael Jones has come out say we should call it digital physics, but I mean we know it as digital physics, so just gonna lay that out, that caveat. And but anyways, what we know as digital physics, even if we don't like the name, so imagine a video game, and in the video game, the characters experience the what they perceive as a physical reality, as is a qualitative world where they can pick up heavy objects, or there's objects that they find heavy. There's doors that they cannot pass through. There's there's physics. There's pretty much laws of physics or digital physics within the video game. So we can create different types of agents, not in the same way as we have, because we have more layers of awareness. But anyway, so there's those characters, those they can have different social boundaries. So there could be characters that could pass through walls. I mean, we make video games with ghosts and with some technology to pass through walls. So a demon would be coded in a way, in a dissociative boundary that doesn't have to follow those rules. So it would explain miracles, as we could rain fire in a video game if the coder wants to. It explains demons. It explains the multiplicity of conscious entities, as there could be multiple persons within that same framework, and it could be ad infinitum. You can make as many characters as your hardware allows. So yeah, there would be a difference of demons in that sense. So it is a mental reality. That's why some people could have seen demons. That's why some demons can possess people, because they live in the same mental reality, and simply they one has to be bound by those digital physics, and the other one doesn't have to be bound by those digital physics. But the dissociative boundary of awareness, they also have one. So it's just it changes how they interact with this digital physical world, pretty much.
So
Not
that's
sure if that answered your question.
well, I don't know exactly, because it sounded like what you just said there at the end, that what separates demons from humans in the sense of being in the image of God, we are and they're not, is the way they interact with well, you said digital world, but this is reality, right? So is that what I'm hearing, is that the way they interact with the physical world is what separates them from being not in the image of God?
No. I was
Okay, I
answering
misunderstood.
Josh. I was answering Josh's question there. So now, if I think now we're moving into
Oh,
the other question. So now this is the question of the image of God, which is what not. That's not what I was responding to.
okay. I
So
apologize.
no
So
worries.
you were responding to my question about the senses?
No, on how both are conscious, how both demons and how both demons and humans are dissociative boundaries, and yet they're different. So I was explaining the metaphysics of it, but I guess now it's a theological question on the image of God. So I explained the metaphysics, but we can go into the now the theological issue.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Sure. Okay. So, for example, when it comes to evil, I would say evil is a privation of good. So that there could be more dissociations than others. So, for example, I believe in the doctrine of theosis, which we brought in the thread.
Okay.
And in the doctrine of theosis, we have Christ in us. So some people argue that in that we don't have a, it's not in a dualistic sense, but in a tripartite sense, that we have a body, mind, and I'm sorry, a body, a soul, and a spirit, and that
Sure.
the spirit is a theosis. So we have some of the um, of the not the associated boundaries of Jesus, but the mind at large, which would be Jesus. He would be the logos, and we have some of that in us. So there is some association. Why? Because in the doctrine of theosis, whenever we see it explicitly taught in the Bible, it says that our good works are the works of Jesus. So it refers to us. It refers to our dissociative boundary, to which will be what is reduced to personhood, as people like Eric Hernandez and J.P. Moreland argue whenever they argue for personhood from the soul. So it's our dissociative boundary, and from there, in that dissociative boundary, we have direct acquaintance with Jesus, with part of what is the mind at large. So Christ is the logos, is the mental reality, and which can be expressed in also that's how Christ incarnate in a digital physics world. So the incarnation and the hypostatic union makes more sense in idealism, I would say. But anyways,
Okay.
So we would have that association with Christ, which is these mind at large within us. Well, a demon that if the doctrine of eternal separation, of hell as eternal separation and evil approbation of good, so it would be interpreted as being more and more disassociated. So Michael believes in his view of hell that people are being separated to the point that they eventually vanish, because you get to a point where you're disassociated so much that you no longer have existence. So I would say demons are in some much more dissociated form than the humans when it comes to logos. When it comes to Christ in us, I don't think they have it anymore. They just have their dissociative boundaries. They would have that acquaintance with Christ. I would simply argue from that interaction between the minds that exist within reality, pretty much.
So could you make the same argument for angels then?
I haven't thought about it too much with angels, but we could do something similar. Just we would have to play a little bit more with how their dissociative boundaries would be working. But yeah, haven't thought much about angels, to be honest. But good question.
No, and that's fine. And maybe I'm just having a hard time understanding the dissociative boundaries lingo. I know you explained it. I'm just gonna have to go back and look and listen to this video to get everything down again. But Josh, let me turn it over to you. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I would want to know, because I think what you're describing is basically that reality itself, both physical and non-physical, is an extension of the mind of God. Is that what you're saying? Or
No,
are you?
not an extension. We so there's several views. There's Hasidic idealism and Barclayan idealism among
Well,
other
don't
types of that
use
believe that.
use the titles. Don't use the titles for these things, because break
Okay.
it down, because there's
Okay.
too many.
Yes.
There's too much being condensed. That's why we're not
Yes.
understanding. I think is
Okay.
because
So
you're using very technical language for very expansive ideas and moving
yeah.
from one to the other fluidly. And I don't think that we're grasping what it is that you're
Right.
saying before moving on.
Yes. No, you're right. You're right. Okay. So so in some forms of idealism, we are thoughts in the mind of God, or we are a part of God's dream. So God would be the mind, and we would be the mind dreamt of. And I would think I'm sorry, and there's also views like we're a novel made by the author God, so a novel that
Right.
exists
Mhm.
within that boundary. So I really love either one. I think both could be a novel, as I can dream novels. I can do a video game that is a novel. I think novels really explain they could be interpreted in a lot of ways in different flavors of idealism. I think that if determinism is true in any idealistic sense, I think we could always reduce it to a novel. And this novel analogy is used by James Anderson and Chris Date. They also affirm this novel view, and that would explain a lot of the language, where sometimes it refers to storyline level state of affairs, and sometimes it refers to the author's relation to the storyline. But I wouldn't say it's an extension. So it merely exists within within God. Why? Because God is what's ultimate in reality, and He defines what existence is. He is pure existence, and whatever is outside of God is not existence. So I wouldn't call it an extension. I would say that would have to be within the mind of God. That's why we're at this associative boundary. So it's not that some space is expanding. It's simply disassociation within the mind at large, which would be God.
So God's mind is like a container.
Well, I mean, if He's ultimate, God is in every single boundary of reality. I don't think there's a place where we.
So then, if God is dreaming,
He's omnipresent.
So if God is
Right.
dreaming or creating a novel of sorts, let's say, let's continue the analogy in that sense, because I think that's probably closer. If God is dreaming or creating a story, does God bear the same relation to the story that an author would to their story, in that it is, let's say, a work of their own mind and therefore fictional in relation to their existence? Are we fiction compared to God, or are we actually as real as God, and therefore that kind of extension? That's kind of what I was asking.
Good question. That's a good question. I would say that there's a bit of a loaded question, where there's some question begging assumptions there, where
well, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
No. Yeah, I know, man. Not trying to insult you. Just saying that seems question begging to me. But okay. So when it comes to our mind, so in your worldview, your dualistic worldview, well, I'm not sure if you're a dualist, but in a dualistic worldview, you're making an image, and that image is a false image of reality. So it would be fiction in that sense. But in a idealistic framework, we have thoughts, because reality is made of thoughts. So thoughts would be real in a sense. And so the same way I can think of characters having thoughts, I don't see why God can think of characters having thoughts. But yeah, so if idealism is true, I think it would seems like it would seem like we would expect thoughts and dreams to have some form of real sense. So in my worldview, assuming my worldview, they would be real. Our thoughts would be real.
So they would be they would be real in the same way that God is real.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if I can have a dream about Tyler, but my dream would be, let's say, a fiction compared to the real Tyler. Tyler really exists compared to a dream Tyler. Do we exist like real Tyler or like dream Tyler?
And
so
I guess just
Go
real
ahead.
quick, Israel, I can elaborate on that a little bit. So I actually had a dream last night that my little girl drowned. I pray to God that never happens, right? But I think what Josh is asking. So whenever I woke up, I ran in just to make sure, because you know how we do whenever we dream about something like that. I ran in to make sure my little girl was okay. She was fine. So in my dream daughter died, but yet my little girl, who is alive and well and running around like a crazy right now. Sorry if you can hear her in the background. She's just that. She's alive and well. And so I think what Josh is asking, from your perspective, are we more like my dream daughter that drowned, or are we more like my real daughter who is running around acting crazy right now?
I would say it's different. So, like
Okay.
the thought I would have would be a possibility. So, God can actualize whatever possible world He wants. He actualized this specifically. So, I don't know why. At least in some other people's indeterministic framework, He would actualize this world specifically. But anyways, there's a bunch of possible worlds out there that could be actualized in a sense, or could exist in some sense in the mind of God. So the idea of your daughter drowning, the thought of it will be a mere possibility. So it doesn't have the qualities, because you don't have associations to all of reality. So if a pantheistic in a pantheistic sense, we would be part of God, but we will be different. So for example, like God can function in 11 dimensions, but let's say we only function in 3 dimensions. So when it comes to the thoughts in the mind of God, they'll be in 11 dimensions. They will be Him having a much more data on his dissociative boundaries that He creates on His characters. They will be much more different of a disassociation than our characters. Our characters will be even less disassociated than we are. Why? Because we don't have the same amount of association as God has. So our thought is going to be much more, much less complex than God's, because we don't have the same complexity as God, the same access to the complexity that God has. So it would be different in the sense of complexity.
Interesting. Okay. Josh?
So it's not necessarily a question of real or not real. What I'm gathering is
What I'm hearing.
that's not something that falls within the framework of what you're talking about. Is that God can choose to make a dream into a reality, irrespective of what we would even mean by real. Like, because Tyler and I are asking about, like, in relation to his person. You know what I mean? God is the most real thing, obviously, right? Being the source, the fountainhead of all reality. Like you said, He's the most existent thing. He's self-existent. That's what aseity means, right? So God being in a position of aseity is the most real thing. Are we real in that sense, that we have some existence that is equivalent to that reality, or we only exist within the mind of God, is what you're saying?
Well, I mean, if we are dissociative boundaries of what? Disassociated from what? Which is from God. So God has existence. We're disassociated from them in our conscious experience, just disassociated in conscious experience. But we would have some nature in the image of God, in that we would be dissociative boundaries of mind at large. So imagine you have a screen, and in that screen you have a character that acts a certain way. So it would be a dissociative boundary of the rest of the screen, but it is indeed has something in the image of the screen. I don't know if that answers your question.
I mean, I don't know that it does either. I'll be honest with you. I think that what you're talking about is something different than what we're talking about. and were ships passing in the night on the question.
Well, I don't know if it's better that we move on into Stratton's argument.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Because we're already at an hour, and we've already got through my argument, and I already have another argument on an inductive argument on Christ's choices, pretty much. But I don't know if we're gonna have time for all that. I guess we just go into Stratton's argument. I presented mine. What I was referring to in my case, on my initial rebuttal. That's what I was referring to. So it's weird that Stratton accused me of a tu quoque, when a tu quoque fallacy is that I don't have an answer, and my answer is you too. So it's not that I have something that actually responds to his argument, but I'm merely stating another argument that you too suffer from the same. So Tim, I do not fall into the tu quoque fallacy. It is a tu quoque. I'm saying you too, but not a fallacy, because that's not my only argument. I'm actually going to respond to your argument. Okay, but yeah, let's go into that into the premises so we can get there.
Yeah.
I guess first put the argument that he presented, the premises, so we have that in mind, and then we can go back and forth with an explanation of the premises.
Sure. Is this it right here? The A1, if Ed is true, then God determines all Christians to affirm some false theological beliefs?
Yeah, that one.
Okay. All right.
I cannot see the screen. I have it my screen is too small, but all
right.
I got it now. I got it.
Yeah, I was going to say you can full screen it if that's too small.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so A1, if Ed is true, then God determines all Christians to affirm some false theological beliefs. And just real quick, for those who might not have seen an episode of Faith Unaltered before, Ed is exhaustive divine determinism. So just so everybody's on board. A2, if God determines all Christians to affirm some false theological beliefs, then God is deceptive, and his word, the Bible, cannot be trusted. A3, God is not deceptive, and his word can be trusted. A4, therefore God does not determine all Christians to affirm some false theological beliefs. A5, therefore Ed is false.
Okay, so starting from premise one, so I affirm premise one. So I think it's true that if exhaustive divine determinism is true, then God determines all Christians to affirm some false theological beliefs. But as I respond to this, and Stratton, when he responds, I want him to assume my view of free will, which would be idealistic in the sense that I explained the past hour. So I affirm premise one. I think it's true. I will have a problem with premise two and premise three. So I affirm one. Okay. I deny 2 and 3, and 4 and false is just a consequence. But yeah, so I think the meat of the argument is on premise 2 and 3.
So real quick then, since you agree with premise 1, can we substitute determines for the word cause? Would you have a problem with that?
I prefer determines because in idealism, especially in Kastrup's idealism, he bites the bullet that we don't have causation, and he argues most of it from empirical data. And I think, there's a lot of mystery on how causation works. I don't think we have figured that out. So causation would be odd. I think determines is pretty good, pretty fair, and it makes justice to his argument because that's the word he's using. So I guess we should just go ahead and use determines.
So in the sense of cause, all I mean is from the early church fathers' view, right? They would see that God is the source, right? So God the Father especially is a source without a source, right? So Jesus is begotten by the Father. The Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. The Father is the only one that can be called a source without a source, right? So that's all I mean by causation, is that God is the source of the Christians affirming some false theological beliefs. That's all I mean by that.
Although in that sense, causing. So imagine an author in a novel. So again, one type of idealism. So imagine I got this novel. In this case, is the Catechism of the Catholic Church. That's my novel today. Okay. And so in that novel, imagine that I have characters that one character that kicks a ball this playing soccer with another character, and one kicks the ball to the other one kicks it back. So in a sense, to the experience of the characters, it would seem causal. But when we see in our experience from beyond the novel, the story, it would be a reduction to information. It will be letters. It will be propositions. It will be information. The same way in a computer, it's ones and zeros. So causation. What if I put a kid kicking a ball to another kid, to another kid, that would look like causation, what we describe as causation, but in the bottom line, it would be ones and zeros. It will be propositions. It will be some logic into it. So it will be weird how to actually think about causation. So causation, when it's used, it's understood in a temporal and in a quantitative sense, quantitative in the materialistic sense. So materialism is quantitative.
That's interesting. So what it sounded like, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what it sounded like was what you said. So whenever you look at it from, and I'm going back to God and us for just a second, not the novel per se, but what it sounded like you said was that in the book world, well, let's just use the analogy. In the book world, it looks like causation, but when you step outside of the book world, it's letters, it's ones and zeros. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Am I picking that up?
Awesome. Yes.
Okay. Great.
Depending on how we describe it, either in a book or in a computer, it depends.
Sure.
In a book will be letters
and a computer's ones and zeros, right?
Uh-huh.
This is where I'm getting hung up on, Israel, and maybe you can help me out. We don't have the perspective from being outside of creation like God does, right? So once we start getting into that territory, I mean, isn't it just speculation at that point? Like, can't we all have our speculative views? And
exactly.
it really, I mean, do we have a way to prove them if the Bible or, from my perspective is, tradition doesn't really say anything about it? Like,
we can make inferences, but how I made my case on arguing for an ordered reality from a mental world, I think it leaves space for a quantitative sort of causation. So whoever tries to argue quantitatively would have to prove that dualism is true, that there's such a thing as a quantitative material world, pretty much. So it depends on who argues it and how they argue it.
Okay, interesting. All right, go ahead.
All right, so let me open it up. All right, so I'm gonna have a problem with the premise 2, which is if God determines all Christians to affirm some false theological beliefs, then God is deceptive, and the world and His word, the Bible, cannot be trusted. And what I found really interesting on Stratton's reply is that instead of exhaustively giving a definition of what deception is, I mean, pull it up, man. Just scroll down and find right there the definition. He literally put a Google image of the right there. You got it. Come on, dude. Read it. What is deception right there, man?
So deception is the action of deceiving someone.
Oh man, come on. That's sorry, Tim. Not laughing at you, but I mean, I mean, you hang up a whole argument on a Google definition. Okay. So I haven't read Stratton's book. I haven't had a chance. I got a wedding upcoming, and I got to work my butt off. And I haven't had the chance to buy and read Stratton's book. But at least in his rebuttal, I would have appreciated if Tim would have, put a more robust definition. I don't think that just putting Google definitions is going to help. It seems it's a little bit weird. Just the act of deceiving someone, it's just not very helpful. And when it comes to philosophical definitions, I mean, in academia, they struggle so much to even define what a share is or what a sandwich is. So it may take pages and books to define a freaking sandwich, to define a share. So even
I actually, if I could, can I, because I think that's actually probably one of the main issues that I would have with agreeing with some of the things that you're saying, is that I think it doesn't really offer much of what I would understand to be a robust answer to the one and the many problem. about consciousness and about our ability to perceive unity and also pick things into their pieces, use them as pieces or perceive them as unities and interact with them as unities. And there seems to be this, like almost like chess, you have the parameters within which you can move, but within those parameters you have quite the selection of regularity that wouldn't defy order.
Not sure if I got your rebuttal right there, but I'm gonna answer the part of the one and the many. So how I account for the one and many in my idealistic worldview would be with a universalist mereology. In a universalist mereology, everything could be one, everything could be many. So if you got a computer screen, let's say a video game, what's the name of that video game? Minecraft. Let's say Minecraft. Or Photoshop. Yeah, I guess let's use Photoshop. So imagine an image that you're photoshopping. Everything could be an object. You could disassociate pretty much anything from a picture. You can take a near off and a cloud from the image, and that will be an object. It will be a something coded. So there's a sense of oneness. There's something that will be a unity within that boundary of the Photoshop thing and also of the image. So there's oneness all around, everywhere in that image. And there's also manyness, an infinity of possible disassociations from all kinds of shapes that you can dissociate from a screen. So I would say a universalist mereology would follow from idealism, would be pretty intuitive, and we observe it and we can do it in our minds. So if Stratton, I don't know if I asked him about his epistemology. I'm not sure if he's a classical foundationalist, but many would affirm direct acquaintance. And if you notice, like my whole argumentation, it starts with direct acquaintances from my experience, which I'm immediately justified to believe. So he's got to keep that in mind whenever he's gonna critique my case. He's gonna make sure that I'm immediately justified to pretty much everything I've said, because I can make an analogy to my personal experience, to what we experience.
Okay, so then your agency is the experience.
The dissociative boundary that is conscious is
like your personhood, your agency, and your personhood
is what the dualist would count the soul.
Demarcation, like your experience of that being isolated from everything else. That experience of being isolated is what makes you a person.
Yeah, whatever that looks like, whatever that dissociative boundary looks like, yes, but that. Yeah, so let's go to, we were saying premise 2, and we were talking about definitions that Stratton pulled a definition from Google that is not helpful at all. And I think it should be more robust. As I was saying, when we see in the literature, we cannot find a freaking sandwich, we cannot find a share. And I was having a discussion on feminism. It was like 30 pages on the definition of feminism. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to discuss with this guy feminism. And he brought a dictionary to pretty much kind of like what Stratton did, just to shop all the implications of what definitions mean, in this case feminism. But in reality, when you look at definitions, it's better to get them from an encyclopedia of philosophy or something more robust, and even that can be edited. They can be added more, so it's more to reason a definition. So I would expect Stratton to reason the implications of what deception means before, because that's not anywhere in the article.
So Israel,
feminism, it took 30 pages, and the conclusion was we don't know what feminism is, or there's not something concrete. So go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So and maybe this isn't robust enough, but let me give a definition for deception, and then I want to ask you, what do you mean whenever you say deceive? So Merriam-Webster defines deception as to cause to accept as true or valid what is false or invalid. Would you differ from that definition? And if so, how?
All right. So repeat it again.
Yeah. So Merriam-Webster defines deceive as this, quote, to cause to accept as true or valid what is false or invalid.
True or
Here, I can share it real
valid.
quick.
What
Let me share this real quick. So
is not true
there we
or
go.
valid? Yeah, I would deny this definition actually, and I got some thought experiments that I actually brought. I'm gonna go with a train of thought of analogies where I'm gonna be presenting several analogies, and every time those analogies will have different layers. So whenever Tim, if you're going to see my first analogy, don't start making objections there, because that's only to make a point, not to express my whole worldview. So it's going to be a set of analogies just to make sure, Stratton, don't just take each one apart and say that represents my my position.
So
okay.
all the analogies are one piece to the bigger picture, right? We got to look at all analogies.
Yeah, we're gonna go step by step to better understand what what deception is.
Sure.
So when we think of deception, we think something like, for example, like a imagine a prison, and there's an inmate that did something terrible, like let's say argue a rebuttal about me and post it on his page. That's horrible. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
You're fiery.
Just kidding, Tim. Love you.
A little firecracker.
So he did something terrible, like let's say the deity of deception argument. No, I'm sorry. I just keep doing it. He did a crime. He stabbed someone. Okay.
He stabbed someone.
Sorry, Tim. Sorry, couldn't hold it. All right, Tim. I'm counting down now. All right. So there's this inmate that stabbed someone, and the prison guards are looking for him. And so they he comes to the door, and he sees some other inmates. I'm talking about the guards. They see some other inmates, and they ask him, where did the inmate go? And the inmates say it went to the left, when in reality it went through the right. In some analogy like this, we would all identify, I think this is non-controversial, that's why we're starting easy.
Sure.
We would all think is non-controversial that the inmates deceived the prison guards on the whereabouts of the inmates. Mm-hmm. So what this analogy is kind of telling is that there's it depends on influences. So right here, the influence is the words that are coming out of the mouth of the deceiver. So it's giving out information, and that information has a causal power on a person. I was talking to Matt Flummer and his co-host. His last name is Sir. I forgot his first name, but anyway, so yeah, they would affirm that some influences would have causal power, and I think over here his premise too depends on influences having a causal power, because intuitively, whenever we come to things like this, to this kind of deceptions, like the inmates giving information, or maybe the inmates putting the let's say putting blood of a certain person, or the eye of a certain person in someone else's cell. So they're not putting words, but they're putting something that is causing something in the mind of the prosecutor, in this case the prison guards. So it seems to me that it must have some causal powers on the person. I think it depends on some causality over here. He would have to argue that, because if not, we would. I think it would be absurd that it would be hard to even define deception in this sense if influences don't have a causal power. Why? Because these sort of analogies would say that, well, they didn't really deceive the inmates, didn't really deceive the cops, because it didn't have an effect on the prison guard. So I mean, something as basic as that we all grant, that we all, so it has a coordinates when we all intuitively have an idea of deception. We think of something as basic as this. So I think Stratton is forced to affirm that influences have a causal relationship with what is influenced. So that is one layer of the analogy. So
okay, so real quick,
I'm forcing Stratton to choose causal influences.
Sure. So, and I know you said that we've got to take these all these analogies, together as a picture. And so I'm not trying to like push back on the analogy per se, but just the definitions that have been given so far. So I've actually had a multiple conversations with Josh about this in particular. And Josh, would we grant that influences have causal power? They're just influences, aren't they? They're not the ones that the things that are causing us. And not only that, but the words. So I wrote down here, the words are the influence in this scenario, would have causal power, but we don't blame the words for doing anything, right? We would blame the person for speaking the words, that they were the deceiving instrument in this scenario, right? But so two things there kind of that stood out to me a little bit, but I want to get Josh's thoughts on that first before we move on.
Well, it's not that influences can't have a causal power of some kind, but there's a leap between influences being causative for something in your choices versus them being the cause of your choices wholesale, like one for one, right? Whereas, let's say if I am sexually assaulted as a child, that will have a causal influence over my development, my perceptions, and other things, and yet that doesn't cause my choices that I make because of those perceptions or experiences or emotive traumas or any of those other things. Those influences will come to bear on the raw material that my will would use in order to make choices.
Sure.
But the will itself wouldn't be moved. The will is the causal power in our view. So those influences are not the causal power. They would be a causal influence rather than being causative in a mechanistic sense.
I actually agree with that.
They wouldn't be causative like a mechanism. They would be influences, which is distinct from cause.
Well, I mean, you use cause within your explanation, so I agree.
Yes, well,
with
let's say for analogy, like I said, that sexual assault of a child, or let's say somebody doing something that brings an emotive trauma to me, that can cause a chemical exchange in my body so that I have the emotive presence of this or that experience that corresponds to that, and that will demarcate some memory process in my brain in the amygdala to red flag that event, and that'll have a long-lasting effect in my choices thereafter. But they're not
effect.
Yes, its presence is permanent because of the memory of the experience.
What leads to effects? It's causes. What leads to effects? You said effects. What leads to effects? Causes. So that is what I mean. So there's something.
The effect not being the choices, the effect being the influence.
Yeah. So I think we agree. I think we agree more than you might think we do. I think we do agree a lot, and probably in all of it. So it has some causal power, not full
causal power over your decision making.
So whenever we intuitively think about why we choose something, so when we ask you something like, why do you choose that, you say, oh, because of this. So we give a reason. So there are reasons of why we choose things. So that will be one of the reasons. And we as minds, we process several reasons, not just one, but multiple reasons. So even in my framework, I could say that the influence caused something, at least to have some perception and to mess with the whole the decision making, as now you have something more to process. So imagine. So you're thinking, let's say I'm thinking about my wedding. What am I going to do in my wedding? And maybe this happens, maybe this, that. But now another information comes. Now there's going to be a meteorite that's going to happen. It's going to come to the earth and destroy the earth in my wedding day. So now there's a one more reason I have to choose whether I'm doing a wedding or not. And that reason, I have to process it along with the other reasons, which is that I want to get married. I think it's beautiful, or whatever other reasons I have. So it has some causal power that it now will get into my my cognitive process, and I'm gonna have to process it along with other beliefs. And we usually process according to our, well, I would say according to our greatest desires. Of course, you guys not going to agree, and Tim is not going to agree, but I guess that's beyond the point. The point is that it is having to be processed along with the other beliefs, and that has an effect. That is the effect that we have to process it, and that's going
right. We do the processing though. The intent over it, right? Like you're talking about that there's a separation between reasons and influences as abstractions, and you, the thing that's mediating between, let's say, competing or compatible desires or influences or whatever. There's still something mediating between competing desires. It's not like the desire or the influence is a causal power in that way.
Yes. So there is our cognitive faculties we are processing in some way. I would say, remember my argument, it falls either in a order sense or non-order sense. So it's a true dichotomy. And I already argued why it should be ordered. So when we process information, I would say we process it in a ordered way. But go ahead.
I was going to say, are we mediating the choices, or are we just experiencing the choices as they happen?
I would say in some sense could be both. So
well, you do experience the choice if you're mediating, so it would be both if you're mediating. But if you're just, because it sounds like you're describing that if the influence or the reason is a causal factor in why the choice happens, that you have an experience and awareness of the choice happening, but you aren't the mediation between influence and choice.
But I am not the mediation between influence and choice.
You are the experience of the difference between.
No, I would say I am the mediator, but how that mediation works, it depends on choice generation, on the nature of libertarian free will, which we already argued. It falls into a true dichotomy, which is either ordered or not ordered. So it falls into that. So whatever that mediation is, I would simply argue that it is a system, a mechanism, which proponents of libertarian free will don't want to use those words because we know systems and mechanisms are ordered. So
well, they're not just ordered; they're inanimate.
Yeah, they're processed. But yeah, I would say we process that information somehow, and it's a ordered way, whatever that is, whatever it looks like. I don't know what that choice generator looks like, but whatever that system is, it's I argue is ordered.
But it ultimately stems back to God. God is the ultimate.
He's the orderer,
right? You're not, or you are.
It depends how. But
you're not a primary orderer, right?
I mean, not primary, definitely not primary. So God is the ultimate cause, the first cause. We are secondary causes, but how he determines things, again, remember my stockfish analogy, which is not about personhood and consciousness. That's not why I use it, but it's about how things could be determined. One can make the algorithm, the ordered choice generator within the stockfish, and stockfish will act like stockfish acts, and through that foreknowledge of that which is within stockfish, from that extensive foreknowledge is how God determines things. So just to make sure that if Stratton criticizes my view, has to be under that lens, which is not coercive again.
Right. And I think what we're getting at too, Israel, is that, given the stockfish analogy, right? Stockfish is only, what's the word I'm looking for? It could not act in any other way other than which it was designed to act, right? Because it starts, and the point that we're getting at here, I think, is that it starts with God, right? In our analogy. And so, or in creation. And so if God, right, had determined us to be another way, then we would have. But because he determined us to be this way, just like the designer of stockfish determined stockfish to be stockfish and not something else, stockfish can only do what it's determined or designed to do. Is that that's fair, right?
It's fair, although I would like to clarify that whenever so I would say God is a source, the first cause, if there's such a thing as a cause, whatever cause is in my worldview, or in your worldview, whatever cause is, God is would be that first originator of that which happened. But when it comes to logical use of language, when we use language, we would say that, for example, I would deny absolute divine simplicity, which Stratton also does. He says he believes it like Craig, but Craig believes in divine simplicity, just not absolute divine simplicity. But I deny divine simplicity in that sense, I would say there's real distinctions, and the Eastern Orthodox Church would also deny divine simplicity in that sense, that they believe there are real distinctions. So in my idealistic framework, if we are dissociative boundaries, we are something else. We are something that is not God. So there's a real distinction between humans and God. There's a true distinction. That's the doctrine of creation. That's how I would interpret it. So there's real distinctions on this mental reality, all sorts of distinctions, and if there are distinctions, there will be propositions true of one distinct thing from the other distinct thing. So when it comes to logical origination, I would say some things are exclusive of those distincted individuals, those distinctive dissociative boundaries. That's actually how I respond to whether God is the author of evil. So God is not the author of evil. I would simply deny that use in the sense that evil is a category logically unique to humans. So, and I would say deception too. So because deception is one of those evils. And
I said and demons, obviously.
Yes. Okay. So, for example, this is part of what was on the post and what Phil Bear replied to. So I was mentioning that that which is evil is sin. So evil is sin. Sin is transgression of the law. So if sin is transgression of the law, who is that law for? That law is for humans. From this associated boundaries, so from these really distinct beings, these beings that exist in reality and are not God, and God is not coercing. So, in the sense, so whoever is giving the commandments would be God, and whoever is following the commandments are humans. So, in this sense, only humans could logically sin, could logically be evil. So, only humans would logically be deceptive, if that makes sense. So it would be one true proposition, because it's what we are commanded to. So that was a problem I was bringing with the those accusations of saying the Calvinist God is evil. Well, how do you define evil? Evil is the transgression of the law, and the law is not for God. God didn't put a law for himself. He actually, when we see the law, it's we have so many food laws. We have a food law in the Garden of Eden, another one in Noah. We have another food law in Exodus. We have another food law in the New Testament. So we have all sorts of food laws. We have some would argue that that Jesus broke some laws through the Sabbath, or taught that we shouldn't keep the law of Moses, which is the Orthodox Christian position, that we Christians are not required to keep the law of Moses, and so it is good to not keep the law of Moses. So it kind of seems changing. So it's kind of hard to even bound God by his own commandments. I mean, what commandments are you going to bound God to? So you have to argue something like what Kyle Allender argues. He says that, there's this moral realm beyond God, that there's moral facts beyond God that are not God and not found in God, that God has to ascribe to. And I think this makes God not ultimate. I wouldn't agree at all with Kyle's view here, but at least is respectable in academia. That's how many atheists argue, and it's pretty robust. And I'm not saying I can refute all of Allender's position there, but it's just not intuitive to me as a Christian theologically. I don't think it's theologically intuitive at all.
Let me just clarify something then, Israel. Jesus was bound to the law, was he not?
He decided to be bound by the law. Why? Because he's a human, he's a Jew, and he was going to accomplish his purpose through being through submitting himself through the law of Moses. But he taught us not to practice the law of Moses. So, I mean, if that's the case, so Jesus pretty much could incarnate later on, and he wouldn't be on the law of Moses. So, for example, if we assume premillennialism and Jesus comes, that second coming of Jesus would be in a New Testament, where there wouldn't necessarily have to be an affirmation of Jewish life. Let's say everyone affirms the substance of Christianity, and the Jews eventually become Christian. we would see people not following the law of Moses. If that's possible world, so God, Jesus could not, in some possible world, not follow the law of Moses.
So he followed the law. He did not act contrary to the law of Moses, because the way you define sin is to transgress the law, right? Well, what law?
Either way,
the law of Moses. And so as God, we would all agree that Jesus is fully God, fully man. And so even if he had reasons for doing it, that's fine. But the point I'm trying to make is that Jesus, being God, was under the law.
In the
And we
incarnation,
can't separate. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I promise you, this is going to be a massive rabbit trail. There's
Okay.
It comes into the doctrine of the communicatio idiomatum and the incommunicables, and how there could be linguistic distinctions between natures without falling into Nestorianism. If you guys want to hear more of that, watch my debate with Daniel Vecchio, where I argue that there must be more incommunicables, and some of those would be motherhood. And I present, I forgot, I think like 7 arguments. It's a lot of information I presented in that opening statement. You can see my opening statement on how I deal with the communicable attributes in the incarnation, and how there could be logical distinctions between natures without separating them. That's it's gonna be there. It's a long debate. It's on Braxton Hunter's channel on Trinity Radio. If you guys want to watch it, but I promise you, it's a massive rabbit trail. I had 8 debates on that topic, and
fair enough.
Some professor, it's a big rabbit trail.
I honestly would like to see that, because I don't know if you're familiar with Jay Dyer or not, but he would argue that Calvinists, they cannot have a orthodox view, and I mean small o at that point, of the Trinity, given that their view of God, especially if the Father damning Jesus, right, would fall into Nestorianism one way or the other. So I would love to hear that and see how you explain that, Israel. So that'd be good. Can you send me a link to that?
Sure. Yeah. I'll send it
cool.
to you by Jer. I got it.
Okay.
And for those that speak Spanish, you guys can also see my debate with Dr. Jonathan Ramos. He's a professor from Argentina. We also had that same debate. The one with Becchio was way better, but for those that speak Spanish, that one was worth it. The rest, the other 6, I don't think they were good. The other Catholic streamers and the other guys were just not very philosophically oriented. Those are the only worthy ones I've had. The only ones worth watching, just the Ramos and Vecchio one. That's the only ones.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to rabbit trail there. Go ahead.
All right, so yeah, let's just go back. So we were saying, we were talking about influences that I guess deception has to have some causality into it. We may disagree on the extent over here. Me and Josh, we kind of I think we agree on that it's causing something, but it's not necessarily the ultimate choice, as that has to be processed. We disagree on how that is processed. I would argue it's ordered, and ordered implies determinism. Someone like Eric Hernandez, he thinks not, but I don't think he gave me good reasons to think not, to be honest. But anyways, I'm not gonna shoot too much on other people. I love Eric. I'm gonna see him the 16 too. Love you, Eric. If you watch this. But anyways, so that was one analogy. Oh man, we're 1 hour and 45 minutes, and we're barely gonna get to the second analogy. So now
we can always do a part 2, brother. You're more than welcome back anytime. I love this exchange between us and you, and so I think that's been really cordial, and I think that we'd love to have you back for part 2, given that we're probably not going to get through all of it. So we can definitely schedule that.
Yeah, although I can go as fast as I can right there. Just,
go ahead.
So another analogy that we would find intuitive on when we try to find deception. So I'm kind of defining it with analogies just to see where some boundaries are. So it's not an exhaustive definition, but it's an exploration of the logical boundaries, the analytic truths of what deception means. So another example is, for example, if we see that there's these inmates that escaped from prison, the prison guards are pursuing the inmates, and then an old lady gives them the false belief, and this false belief has a causal power. So she tells them they went that way, but she sold, and she just she thought that, but maybe she was distracted or something, and for without being intentionally deceiving, she told a lie, and she gave a false belief to the guards. So in this sense, I don't think that we would say that the old lady was deceptive. I think when we have this intuition, I think there has to be some intentionality of wrongness into it, as this lady was ignorant of where they was, but she thought she knew where the inmates went. So I think this is pretty intuitive. Do you guys have that same intuition on the influence from the old lady being just confused?
So I would just remark that, did she have any malintent? No, of course
No,
not.
no. It was
She was confused, obviously. Right. No. I'm just saying.
okay. I thought it was a
Yeah.
question for me. My
No,
bad.
I'm just being rhetorical. No,
Right.
no. Was she confused about something that she thought that she had saw, and therefore gave that information, right? Because the information was false, and her being the instrument, her words being a causal force, a causal power in that sense, right? That's I would say that's still deceptive, yet that she's not being, malicious in the sense, right? She's confused. She gave a false statement, and therefore she's being deceptive. It has nothing to do with whether or not she's, trying to be or not, right? She is, because she caused them to believe something that is false. That's my opinion. But Josh, what do you think?
Josh, what are your thoughts, Josh?
You're muted, bud.
I was gonna say, can you do me a favor and repeat the actual analogy itself?
Yeah, so pretty much the inmates they run out from prison, and the prison guards ask an old lady, where did the inmates go? And the lady, she thinks they went a certain way, and they didn't in reality went that way. So pretty much they believed a false belief that the lady gave. So the question is, was the old lady deceptive here?
Deceptive in, I mean, yes, if we're being technical, yes, but in a way that lacked intention. So in that way, not in a morally culpable sort of way.
Okay. Well, maybe I asked the wrong person. Maybe I should have asked someone that is not in a discussion with a Calvinist, someone that is not a Calvinist, understands Calvinism, and rejects it. Maybe it was a bad idea, but I think if we ask people, we wouldn't say that lady is untrustworthy. So, because if you notice in the premises of Tim Stratton, he says that if you determine someone to have false beliefs, and these ladies somehow causing a false belief, and you're saying she's deceptive, so
hold on,
we cannot trust that old lady. We cannot trust her.
So let me push back now. So let's just say, let's go a step further with the old lady. Say she's senile and she's confused a lot. Would you consider that person trustworthy?
No.
What's the difference between one time and multiple times?
So it depends. So, well, that's why we have to go through some more analogies. But let's say we would say it's a character trait to be trustworthy. So we can trust that at least if she's honest, we can trust that she is giving us what she truly believes. So we can trust that she's giving us what she truly believes. So that will be one thing. Sure. So she will be trustworthy in character wise. So it will be only untrustworthy on getting reliable information. That'll be a different scenario. But
exactly. I mean, and that's what Josh and I were trying to show, is that she's not intentionally being deceitful. No, she really believes that she saw this person run one way whenever in reality they didn't. And so that's what we mean by she's not intentionally trying to mislead these people. She really believes what she saw. The fact of the matter is she was just wrong. So that's not culpable or anything like that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Maybe you might be able to push it to that, but
well, we have to go through the rest of the analogies. I just
that's
to see what your intuition is on this case, because my intuition was that she's not deceptive. Because like we would have to have some data.
Exactly. And she might be generally reliable, but in that sense, she's not absolutely reliable, right? Like you would argue for God.
but that doesn't matter. I think what matters is how
Okay.
people understand it colloquially. So we would have to do something like asking, let's say, I don't know, 1,000 people, and ask them the same analogy,
Have to do a study,
and ask
yeah.
them, would you say that she's deceptive, in order to see if this analogy really, if the lady truly is deceptive or not, because it depends on how we use language. So,
Right. But even in that sense, if the consensus were to say she's not, that doesn't make that true, right?
Well, because words mean things. So deceptive in Stratton's argument means something. So if it means deceptive, it's what people understand as deceptive. So it would, yes, it would be dependent on what deceptive means, and it means what it is understood as, what we as humans communicate, what we refer to as in reality. So I think
I
we
agree.
have I agree. Awesome. All right, so now I guess I'm gonna speed up to the last analogy. Let me see if I find it. All right, now we're gonna do an analogy where there's a landowner, and that
Okay.
landowner has a big plot of land next to a prison, and in his plot of land, this landowner has a lot of trees, a lot of rocks, a lot of places where, I don't know, people like inmates could hide. Um, so he's got a lot of hiding places, and not just that, he's got a construction company, and he's got a lot of material, a lot of equipment that is orange, that is orange in color, and the jumpsuits of the inmates are orange too. So remember, the plot of land is next to a prison, and the inmates are gonna look orange, and the equipment is orange, and there's a lot of places to hide. So imagine the inmates escape, and they go into a land, and the land has an influence on giving false beliefs to the prison guards that are pursuing the inmate. So it gives a false belief that that the inmate is not there. Why? Because he's hiding behind the tree. So the guard doesn't have awareness of where the inmate is, and also it leads to false beliefs, as whenever the prison guards would see some orange equipment, they could mistakenly believe that it is an inmate, when in reality it's just the orange equipment. So there are things in this analogy that would be, that we will call deceptive. Was the tree deceptive, or the how's it called, the landowner deceptive by just having those things? And we can add two analogies, so just to speed it up a little bit, where I'm really going. So we can add to this analogy now that the landowner knows, so he has knowledge that some prison guards actually escape the prison. Let's say he knows that once a week a prisoner will escape, and he knows that since an inductive case that has happened many times, and he knows that the cops get deceived by the trees and by the orange equipment, by his orange machinery and orange cones and whatever. So he knows he has deceived, and he knows that has a causal influence. Would we say that the landowner is deceptive? Now we can add to this analogy some other factors. Like we can add that yes, he knows it, but also he's got good reasons to leave his stuff there. So he's got the good reasons of loving nature. That nature is beautiful, is aesthetic nature. He's got I don't know, like some fruit trees, some melons, some banana trees, or whatever those are called. So he wants his fruit. He's not gonna cut his trees just because some inmate is going there. So he has full knowledge, and he knows that he's having a causal influence on the prison guards, and he knows that his equipment leads to false beliefs in the prison guards whenever they confuse them, his equipment with the prison guards. So he knows that. but he has good reasons. So he's got all the nature reasons, and for his equipment, let's say he has his orange equipment for safety, and because it will cost him money to repaint it some other color, and also his brand is orange. Let's say he worked for the logo, and it has a meaningful reason of why his orange logo and his orange color represent his brand. So imagine whatever bundle of good reasons you want to imagine, and I ask here Stratton and my interlocutors to actually try to imagine whatever, as many good reasons that he could have as possible. So I think if Stratton's case is true. So, I mean, how can we even say that the person is untrustworthy, that the landowner is untrustworthy? So he's having a causal influence on the prison guards that leads to something that one would consider as non-virtuous, which is it's not good that inmates escape justice, and he's determining some of that, not all of it, is some in some sense determining some of that. Would we say that the landowner is unreliable, that we cannot trust him? I mean, he's got good reasons, and he's got let's say, good character. He's a good Christian, and he doesn't lie. I mean, I think this is where Stratton's analogy crumbles, because it's causal. It leads to false beliefs. It's has some determination. Yet our intuition, I don't think it would lead us to think that the landowner is actually deceptive. I think it's a big problem for Stratton here when we apply our intuitions. I mean, would you not trust the landowner just because of that? That would be pretty odd.
Are you asking us, or is that rhetorical?
It's rhetorical. Yes.
Okay.
So then,
you guys can share your thoughts.
Are we assuming, for the sake of your analogies, that the influences are causal in the way you're describing them?
In the way we are describing, in the way you and I described it, Josh. So just to be
well, I made a distinction from the way that you were using it.
No, I think we argue for it the same way.
Okay, because then I would say no, that he's not being deceptive, because his influence of using the color orange, especially with no relation in his intention to actually getting the prisoners to escape. If this is simply by accident of location, then no, it has nothing.
It's not accident. It's not an accident, because remember, in my analogy, the landowner is fully aware of the consequences that his trees and his landscape and his orange equipment is going to have. He's fully aware.
So did he choose all of those things because the inmates are escaping and they happen to wear orange?
No, his logo's orange, his uniform's orange.
Then I don't think they have anything to do with one another, and it doesn't make a difference to whether or not he's morally trustworthy or not.
Right.
Okay,
no,
so
if he knows,
thank you. I think that crumbles Stratton's position then.
Because, I don't think Stratton's arguing that influences are causes.
Excuse me?
I said I don't think that Stratton is arguing that influences are causes.
Well, but okay, good point. So we're gonna take two routes. So we already took the route that influences are causal, and I think you seem to agree that my analogy defeats Stratton's untrustworthiness of the landowner if influences are in some sense causal. And now we're gonna take the other route. So the other route is that influences are not causal, but I mean, I would say that leads to some absurdities on how we would. So let's say that they don't have any causal power. So now we will have to rephrase all the analogies we did. Why? Because whenever let's start with the first two analogies of the inmates telling false information to the guards. The false information that they gave, like oh, it's over there, when in reality it's to the other side, that's not going to have any effect on the prison guards. Why? Because there's nothing causal, so there's no effect. So what they're saying has no effect. What is effect? Effect is something that comes from a cause. So you cannot say that it's over there when it's in reality over there. That's not going to affect anything on the agent, because in order to have an effect, that must have a cost. So there's no effect. So I think it leads to absurdity. And now, I mean, it destroys the whole definition of what deception is. I think how do we even find deception if it doesn't have an absolute effect on anything whatsoever? I think it leads to absurdity. So if those are the two options, my analogy defeats. It's a
well, those aren't your two options, though. I'm disagreeing that those are the two options. I think that you're drawing a line arbitrarily that isn't there, and that's why it won't land for Stratton.
Sure, feel free to present. That's cool.
That influences simply aren't causal in the way that you're implying by saying that they're a cause to the decision rather than an influence to the decision.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it has some causal influence. Some.
But that's too
vague. Not saying it's causing, not causing the choice entirely. But
I just find it to be too vague, is all.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's still not. I mean, I don't think you presented a third option there. I think it's the same options, just rephrased differently.
Like I said, I'm not trying to offer objections. I'm trying to ask clarifying questions, and I don't think that the clarity brought anything that I would say has anything to map onto what I think Stratton is saying. I think that you're assuming that the dichotomy that you've drawn encapsulates what Tim is imagining already. And
I'm not affirming that it's a true dichotomy. I'm saying this is the two options that we seem to have. That it's maybe it's a dichotomy because one it has some causal power or no causal power, but
right, or some causal power. Or
is A. So it seems like a dichotomy, A or not A. Maybe it's a dichotomy.
Well, it's a gradient, because you can have things that are immediately causative, which are influential, like the brandishing of a pistol, which is different than giving the wrong information verbally or pointing a finger, making a gesture, something like that. There's a lot of individual nuance that can go into a situation like that, but ultimately it still doesn't go from the visual stimuli to immediate movement and causality.
I'm not saying it has to be immediate.
Disconnect between those things, and so there's a gradient of causality as well, where you have the influence being a gradient of causality toward my will. But my will is, in my view, which I'm assuming Stratton would agree with me, is that my will is the thing mediating between competing influences or desires, so that I am the immediate causal power over the decision and action, rather than over what is inputted into my experiences. I'm necessarily constantly harvesting data through my senses, but my senses and the influences that I gather from them don't immediately bypass the experience to the choice. I am the mediating causal power between those two things, and it's not random, because what I mean by I consider a real thing, and it's not random because it was designed by God, and I would include that thing that it is, not as a generative mechanism, but as personhood itself in a reflection of the image of God. That we do have that. So if you were to continue this into the author analogy, it would make us co-authors within time, within the framework of the story itself, something like that. And so if I were to give a third category, it would be participative.
Yeah, let me just interject 2 points right there. So one of your points was that there's this third option, and that the cause is not immediate, but it happens later on in a somewhere in a chain of causes. But remember, the dichotomy is some causal effect and no cause at all. No
it can have a physical causality.
But you can
any number of things could happen.
So it's still two options. It's just that this option you can stretch it 30 times, 40 times. Doesn't matter how many times, but it's still putting more layers into it. It still falls into the causal option. So it still falls within the true dichotomy. And when it comes to the other part of saying, okay, I'm the mediator, but remember, we have to go back to the argument already presented in the first hour, which is that that mediation, that whatever choice generating system we have, whatever intentionality we have, whatever personhood we have, is going to be the decision making process is going to be either ordered or non-ordered. So whatever way you're going to frame it, I'm arguing that you have to fall within that true dichotomy. You have to argue that either it's not a true dichotomy, that either is ordered or not ordered, but I mean, it's A or not A. I mean, I don't think it's possible. Or argue something
well, not in the framework that you're using, because you're a determinist in some real sense. So it wouldn't work outside of it. You'd have to come outside of that framework to have the other options.
But help me conceive something that is ordered yet indeterministic. So just help me conceive something. So just one example.
Something that is ordered and not deterministic.
Yes.
I would say human agency, but you disagree.
No, that begs the question, man. I mean, that's
we're both begging the same question here.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm saying there's two logical options, and whatever agency is falls into either ordered or non-ordered. So I'm
and I agree that it's ordered. I just don't agree that it's determined.
But give me an example of something in reality.
Human agency. That was my answer. That's what I'm saying. Is we're missing each other in the night.
No, that's
we're coming down to it. That's I think the ultimate point of contention, though, is that I'm emphasizing that personhood is a real thing outside of material reality and can't be reduced in that way.
But is it explainable?
It's reducible to a mechanism.
Is it explainable? Can someone possibly explain it? Can God explain that?
Can God explain it?
Yes,
sure.
Can God explain
I just don't think it's a mechanism.
Wait a second. So you said God can explain it. So if there's explanation, so when you explain something, you are talking about the intentionality within that thing that we are referring to in reality. So by explaining, you're giving reasons for something in reality. So God is identifying something, and something has to have a shape. So if something has a shape, by the definition of order implies some form or shape. So God is seeing an order. So if it's explained by God,
like a recognizable identity.
Yeah, it's something recognizable. If God recognizes it, it has some form, some shape. Because he's recognizing something. So Stratton is going to fall into that too.
I don't think that's a fall. I don't find that to be troublesome in the way that I think you're indicating.
Well, I'm gonna leave that to the audience and Stratton to do his homework on these response and this analogy, and also on my argument. We couldn't have much time for the rest of it. I wanted to respond to Phil Bear and
yeah, I've got 15 minutes before I have to get to work, or not get to work, but start getting ready for work.
And I have to go to sleep because I wake up at like 4 or 5 a.m. every day.
Are you on Eastern time, Israel, or
what is it? I don't know.
So right now it's 10:30 Eastern.
Whatever Dallas time is.
Okay, so you're in Dallas, Texas. Okay.
No. I'm in Odessa, Texas, but we have Dallas time pretty much.
Okay, that's probably Central, I would think. Or
Central. It's Central. Yes.
Okay, correct. So you're an hour behind. So it's 9:30 there.
9:33. Yes. Correct.
Okay. Yeah, it's 10:33 here. So okay.
Yeah, but okay. Josh, I mean, love you, brother. Love you, Josh. Just don't think I'm trying to undermine you, put you down. Just
no, not at all.
I mean, it seems like you're kind of like representing a Stratton over here in a.
Well, I'm representing what I would say is ultimately
what Stratton could say.
Well, I mean, without even trying to necessarily anticipate what he would say, I'm trying to give what I would say based on because we've had we have a 10 video playlist with 22 hours on this topic.
And now we just added 2 more to it.
Right, exactly. This is something that we can add to the same playlist of the same conversation happening here.
Right.
And we've had Colton on before. He was one of the guests that was very informative of why I'm able to map most of the things that you're saying, is because I've had conversations with other people that are using similar ideas, but perhaps not the same exact vocabulary that you were using. But I think that what the pointed difference that I would say that we have is, I would say that the agency I'm conceiving of is untethered from the causal necessity, and the one that you're describing is nested within the causal necessity. And I think that's the main difference. And so I think, you've done a pretty good job of coming up with cogent answers for any of the clarifying questions that I had. And I feel really satisfied with, how the conversation went. Nobody got mean or anything like that. And I find you to be a very respectful, though somewhat confusing kind of guy. And I am intrigued. And so I would really like to talk to you again. I think this was great.
Awesome, man. Likewise. I really love the insight that you both provided, and you guys are amazing hosts. You guys are fantastic hosts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, when I go to Soteriology 101, usually the non-Calvinists there are horrible. The anti-Calvinists are horrible, man, and I don't get treated that well in some groups, despite of being nice at first. Of course, later on, if they push me enough, I'm mean to them. But I mean, you guys are different. You guys have been pretty pretty charitable, pretty insightful, and you guys are giving me a platform right now to respond to Stratton on
That's right.
His views. I don't know, is he in the chat, by the way?
I haven't seen him chat. I know that he had plans with his wife a little bit later on, but other than that, I haven't seen him. But no, that's
he's gonna have a lot of homework today, man.
I mean, we've got 2 hours of material, so
much. And
well,
we missed a lot of the case, man.
I'd love to have you back before the 16th to do a part 2, Israel, if you're interested in that discussion. But what you said just a minute ago, that's something here at Faith Unaltered and CSG that we're trying to strive to do. Even if we end up disagreeing in the end, we seek to have these conversations without being disagreeable, right? And so I think it's important to be able to not only have a platform in which we do this, but to contribute to the conversations that are happening about this conversation and all the other conversations in which people disagree about, to show them, look, that you don't have to come here and be just all of a sudden have your guard up. Like, no, we're trying to understand. We're trying to seek to be loving and charitable toward anybody that we disagree with. And I thought that this conversation was a really good representation of that. So thank you just as much as you're thanking us.
Yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, love you guys, and really hope to see you guys again. You guys are awesome.
Absolutely.
And if I could add one thing, I think that it's important to recognize that Tyler and I are not people that often chase after debates, and so I think
not anymore.
There's something to be said about having an approach that is primarily aimed at, having a conversation rather than establishing correctness necessarily, that fosters this kind of environment that we're doing right now, where for the most part, until the very end there, I didn't offer any real objections or my own opinion. And it was kind of one of those things where, and it's interesting that you'd said it. It's like, well, I'm not sure if you have this position or not. That means I'm doing it correctly, because my position shouldn't be what we're talking about yet. We're talking about your position. And so if you picked up on that, that's what we're aiming at doing, is really to allow the conversation to form around clarity rather than these odd gotcha moments that people are trying to aim at. Right. They're a lot cheaper. It's more costly to invest the attention and time and questions into listening carefully to what someone is saying and try to engage with their thought.
I would say usually I would agree in almost every scenario, and when we interact with people online and everything. But when it comes to debates, I think the purpose is to educate an audience. So if I have a public debate, I tend to be quite strong in my assertions, and I do try to get to some gotcha moments, but not to humiliate the other person per se, but to pretty much so that the audience can see clearly the best representation of one position. Why? Because when you see a debate and one of the debaters that, let's say the debater that you agree with, imagine your favorite non-Calvinist, your favorite Armenian or Eastern Orthodox goes to debate, and he represents Orthodoxy horribly. You'll be like, oh, come on, like this guy, like you're representing us. Now we're gonna look bad in front of people. That's how I feel when Calvinists represent Calvinism horribly. For example, like when Jonathan Pritchett and Leighton debated 2 Calvinists. I don't know their name, and I don't want to know them.
But it was horrible. I do believe. Is that the debate, Josh? Sonny Hernandez, and what was the other guy's name?
Yeah, there was a Sonny. Yeah.
So
Sonny Hernandez. It was horrible. It was horrible.
Sonny Hernandez and
I forget the other guy.
Beyond the Fundamentals guy, Keith. What's his name? No,
I don't know, and I'm gonna forget tomorrow again because they
I
represent
can
Calvinists
imagine his face
terribly.
too. Oh, that's
And
annoying.
I don't want people to represent Calvinism that bad. I would rather have people not represented than represented wrongly. And in a debate, I think we should be pushed back, and there should be the best representation that we have when it comes to rhetoric. We should use the rhetoric to represent our be correctly, and both debaters should do that. I think, but in
Teddy
online
Zacharias.
Teddy, okay.
Theodore Zacharias and Sonny Hernandez versus Jonathan Pritchett and
We're talking about a different debate. I had a different debate in my head.
And Sonny. Is that the one you're talking about, Israel?
It was Pritchett and Layton, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just remember those two. I don't remember the Calvinists. And,
Wow.
But I know what you mean. That's a horrible debate. And if anybody's seriously inquiring into this, that's one you don't want to watch. Unless you're just looking for a UFC match, like that, I go. But if you're seriously inquiring into this, not a lot was given.
That was not the one.
Nope. But all right, guys. Let's go ahead and we will sign off of here. Israel, again, we thank you for joining us, my friend. It's been a good conversation. We want to have you back for part 2, obviously. And so I think that if you want to later on, maybe we can discuss, when that will be. Also to our audience, thank you for sticking around. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. We've got good things coming up. Craig Trujillo, Orthodox Christian, and Brian Wolfmueller, who is a Lutheran pastor, will be coming on September the 17th to talk about sacraments and the differences and similarities between sacraments, namely baptism and the Eucharist, whenever it comes to those two different Christian theories and theologies about baptism and about the Eucharist. So look forward to that. We've got a good show coming up. Let's see, when is it? The 15th, I do believe, of this month, with our old co-host Dale Glover. He is joining us for a discussion about forgiveness. Should Christians forgive only when repentance is offered from the other person? That will be, I think, a really good discussion. Dale and I disagree on that foundation. We believe that Christians should forgive whether or not the person that offends us comes seeking forgiveness and reconciliation or not. And so that's how we would argue that. On the 8th, we have Josh is doing Materialism Part 3 with Dane, our co-host from 3 Crowns. On the 1st, we've got a person who just emailed me randomly one day. He wanted.
There's no randomness. Did you learn anything today, Tyler? There's no randomness, bro.
From our perspective, bro.
Oh,
but no. So John emailed me, and he determined to. So that's how that came about. But about why I left Protestantism to go to Orthodoxy. So we're going to be talking about that. 3 Crowns. We've got a really good episode coming up tomorrow with Kelly Powers. And I hope the person that's coming on with us ain't watching. Oh yeah, it's Jordan Hatfield. I forgot about that. So Kelly and Jordan's going to join us tomorrow to discuss Sean Griffin. You ever heard of him, Israel? Sean Griffin?
Yes.
Oh boy. Ooh. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about some of his views when it comes to the eternal priesthood of Christ, Christ's body, or Christ not being an atoning sacrifice whenever he died on the cross for us. That's a view that Sean holds that hopefully we will dig into a little bit more tomorrow. So good stuff coming up on the Faith Unaltered Network. Until the next time we all see you, good night.
Don't forget to send your super chats, because remember, I'm going to hack their account and get them for my wedding.
Send them.
Don't forget to send them.
Israel needs all the help. You know what? We'll gift them to him. We'll gift them to him for his wedding.
I'm joking.
No,
you
done set the stage. So if you send us a super chat, we'll send it to Israel for his wedding as a token of good faith. And so,
Frankfurt style case, he was determined. Yet he's morally responsible for.
And I determined to set up a firewall to prevent that from happening. I thwarted him.
Jeez, wow. But yeah, send the Patreon account. I'm gonna hack all of it. Still, it'll all be hacked.
Hey,
I
you
don't
can
know how
hack
to
our
hack, but
Patreon account all you want. We ain't got one. So
I can argue for digital physics, but it asked me how to hack something. I can't.
he's like, nope,
I'm
done
gonna
with
try and fail, and but yeah, the intention was there. The malicious intention was there.
it. There you go. And that's why you're culpable. So there you go.
Right, exactly.
Right on. All right. We will see you next time. Good night. God
Good
bless
night,
and
guys. God
stay
bless.
like Christ.